After listening to months of heartbreaking testimony in the penalty phase trial of the Parkland school shooter, the jury delivered its verdict about 2 weeks ago. Now, they were not able to come to a unanimous decision on the death penalty, meaning the shooter would instead spend the rest of his life in prison without the possibility of parole. Now, understandably, that decision led to an outpouring of emotion from victims' families and was not without controversy. A number of issues sprung up regarding jurors and the deliberations, and while court is still sorting it all out, one thing was clear. Things got tense in that deliberating room. Court TV legal correspondent Julia Janae spoke with a juror who voted against death, Dr. Melody Vanoy. Now, Vanoy spoke about what happened in that deliberating room and how she felt after the verdict.
Talk about the families. And I know you've said already that it wasn't the jury that failed them, it was Florida law that failed them. Can you explain that position?
I think emotionally everyone was aligned with the families, and still to this day. I think that the reason I chose to speak out is in the first 48 hours following the verdict, there was no public discourse on all of the information that we had to go through. And despite how we felt emotionally, we couldn't take any of that into account. As I stated before, we were given specific instructions. We were told exactly, what we could count on and what we couldn't, and the rules were the rules. So that's what I meant by the Florida law failing the families, because if we were just to go by the votes, the majority of the jurors voted for the death penalty.
All right, joining me as my special guest for this segment, the father of Parkland victim Gina Montalto, Tony Montalto, is with us to talk more about that juror interview and the process as a whole. Tony, again, thank you so much for joining us. I want our viewers to know that after we did that interview, you did in fact contact us wanting to come on and speak about a few things. You heard that that sound. First and foremost, let me ask you this before we get into that discussion. It's been 2 weeks. How are you holding up? How are the families holding up in that period?
Well, as for my family, it's been a very difficult time. It's re-traumatizing to bring us back to the beginning of this tragedy, when nobody seemed to care enough about our daughter and the other victims to do the right thing. You know, we saw the schools fail, we saw the school district fail, we saw the sheriff's office fail, and we saw the FBI fail, and now we've seen quite frankly, the criminal justice system fail us, and specifically the jury. They can say what they need to get through the night, but they failed the families.
All right, so let's dig into that a little bit. I know you have an issue with some of the jury deliberations, so explain to us what you mean when you say the jury failed the families.
Well, the jury did not, I believe, take into account all the evidence. I mean, they found all the aggravators to be true, yet somehow they found a mitigator. And let's just call a mitigator what it is. It's an excuse. It's a reason to justify the murder of 14 school children and 3 teachers. There was nothing presented in the shooter's life that justifies his act of being judge, jury, and executioner to my beautiful daughter, Gina, or any of the other victims that day. So I think we need to just be honest and say that they found an excuse. I don't think they deliberated long enough, quite frankly, to look at 3 months worth of evidence and come back with saying he didn't deserve the death penalty.
All right, Tony, I want to listen to something the jury foreman said. He did an interview with a local news station about the deliberations. You're right, they didn't take very long, but I want to listen to him, and then I got a question for you. Let's take a listen.
Sure.
I don't like how it turned out, but that's how the jury system works.
What were the feelings of the jurors in there? Enough mitigating circumstances?
It really came down to a specific jury that, he was mentally ill, and she didn't believe because he was mentally ill he should get the death penalty.
How many people felt that way of the jury panel?
There was one with a hard no, she couldn't do it. And there was another two that ended up, voting the same way.
Now, Tony, the takeaway from that for me is that the jury did their job. Their duty was not necessarily to the families, but to the system and the rules that were given to them. They didn't deliberate long, but it sounded like there was robust discussion. Things even got a little heated in there. There was an accusation of perhaps some threatening behavior. They did look at video. They brought the gun inside, and some minds were changed. They actually went the other way. So in terms of how the system looks at the job of a jury, they did their job.
Well, I believe that they believe they did their job, but I don't know how you could find all the aggravators to be true and then quickly turn around and say, well, there's this mitigator. And certainly the one juror saying that she believed that he should get life paved an easy path for the others not to have to make a tough decision. I'll say there was a lot of evidence to consider. I don't believe that, well, let's just say if Mr. Cruz was mentally ill and couldn't have a trial, he would have been found insane. But they found him competent to stand trial. And I believe that the evidence, while somebody may be not right who goes and murders 17 people, to excuse that act, to excuse the cold, calculated, and premeditated murder of those children and those teachers is really a difficult thing to understand. And we understand that the rule said that it had to be a unanimous jury. We do understand that. But we also think that, in terms of the jury instruction to disregard the victim impact statements, we understand that was part of the instruction, but we believe that is not fair to the victims. We believe that it is not fair to have the only people who can speak for those who can't speak for themselves. The shooter had the opportunity to speak for himself in the courtroom. He chose not to. My daughter didn't have that chance.
Fair enough. Let me ask you this. What message, if any, do you think the jury sent with their verdict?
Well, I think we have to consider that very carefully. From my own family's point of view, I had to explain this verdict to my 16-year-old son, a son who I'm trying to raise to be a good person in this world, to follow the rule of law. And how was he supposed to wrap his head around that this group of jurors said that a person who murdered his sister in cold blood, who murdered other students and other teachers, didn't deserve to be put to death? He's still drawing his breaths. He will live out his days in prison. And my beautiful straight A student daughter, a Girl Scout, member of the Color Guard, somebody who volunteered in her church, is gone, taken by this monster. So what do we send to society when we say that there's an excuse, a mitigator for that kind of act?
Yeah, Tony, I did a little research for this segment and found out that initially the Florida Supreme Court had overturned Florida's attempt to get a 10-2 vote be enough for a death penalty verdict. Turns out that in 2020, they reversed their position, saying that they were wrong about that and that perhaps it may only require a majority who want the death penalty, that the unanimity is only required that everyone think there was enough aggravating factors to outweigh mitigating factors, but as far as the death penalty is concerned, so there seems to be room. Are you going to advocate for a change in Florida law at this point? It seems like a lot of people might be on that bandwagon right now.
Certainly our families will once again use the tragedy that has affected us to change Florida law for the better. And again, this isn't a desire to see people put to death. It's a desire to see the law carried out and the fullest extent of the law. How can we justify letting someone continue to breathe and live the rest of his natural life when innocent people are murdered, especially in a proven cold, cruel, calculated, and heinous way. Not everybody deserves a death penalty. Some do. There's got to be a lot of careful consideration of it. It's got to be a fair trial, and fair means also fair to the victims. You know, in the courtroom, we weren't allowed to wear pins or bracelets, or even my wife couldn't have her necklace that has our daughter's picture on it in the courtroom, to make sure we had a fair trial for the shooter. Yet that is the same man who walked into that school, put the barrel of that gun against my daughter's chest, shot her, walked away, came back and shot her again. I don't know how those jurors are sleeping at night. And let's hope that his writings and advice to other shooters don't make it out into the public domain, because then those jurors who said he could live might want to think about the other blood that could potentially be on their hands.
All right, Tony Montalto, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Again, the deepest condolences from everyone here at Court TV. Appreciate you coming on the show. And it is an issue. This death penalty issue is one in Florida we will continue to watch. Again, thank you so much for joining us. Folks, we're going to take a break right now. We'll be right back.